The tea, and we'll start in a couple of minutes, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us so much today. There's still people trickling into the webinar, so we'll wait a couple minutes, grab a coffee, grab a tea, something cozy. We'll get started in a couple minutes here. All right. Awesome. For those that are coming in right now, thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes to get some more folk in before we kind of formally start. All right. I know what it's like coming right from meetings, going from one thing to the other. Have a stretch, grab some coffee, grab a tea. All right. We'll begin in a couple more minutes here. Thank you so much for your patience. All right. Just begin in a couple more minutes for those that are joining us now, coming from other meetings. All right. So it looks like I was going to say most people are here, and I was going to say I know we'll have more trickling in as we kind of convert from one meeting to the next or grabbing coffees and teas. But just to rest assured, we are recording this meeting just for those who aren't able to join us today. And maybe just to start off, I was going to say, for those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Erin Hodgins, and I'm the Director of Research and Analytics with Destination British Columbia. And before we begin, just to kind of ease, this is very exciting for us, for the BCTCRI project and my nerves. Just yeah, I encourage you if you want to follow along with me. I'm going to put both feet on the ground and just take a big breath, calm myself down a little bit. So I'm not talking super fast today. So just with deep gratitude, I just want to give thanks to all the lands that we are all on right now across the province. And I also just want to send my sincere appreciation for all of you for taking the time to join us this morning. And in the spirit of working together, just want to recognize I'm also representing the BC Tourism Climate Resiliency Initiative as the project lead for the work that I'm sharing with you today. So for some logistical information, this is, like I say, being a panelist, I can't see all of you, but so grateful that you're here. So we're hosting this as a webinar. So we'll have time after my kind of 25-minute presentation that will provide an overview of why we're all here. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them into the Q&A functionality or the chat functionality, and we'll either address it during the presentation or right afterwards. So just to also let you know that Susan Rybar from Vardo Creative, who's been supporting this project, thank you, Susan, will be monitoring the questions as they come in. And when we get to the Q&A section at the end, it's a little bit old school because it's set up as a webinar. You'll have to formally raise your hand in the kind of functionality, and we'll unmute you so we can have that rich dialogue at the end. So with that, I think we're going to get started here. So Elena, if you mind switching to the next slide, please. Thank you. So today, hopefully just a short 25-minute kind of session today. The first thing we're really going to focus on is providing a little bit of context about what the BC Tourism Climate Resiliency Initiative, the BCTCRI, is. So for those who have been part of this journey over the last 2 years, a warm welcome back. This will be a refresher for you about like what's been going on specifically with Project 3 today. And for those that are brand new, have never heard of this project, a warm welcome to you as well for being here. And we're hoping to provide enough context to so you have an understanding of what we're trying to achieve collectively with this provincial project. We'll quickly go through the ask. Thank you so much for your time. About what we're trying to achieve collectively together through this call. And then we'll get into some specifics around timelines and tools that will be provided, and then followed by that Q&A session. So we'll move into the next slide around what the BCTCRI or the BC Tourism Climate Resiliency Initiative is all about. And we'll go to the next slide, please. So in March 2023, Destination British Columbia received $3 million from the BC Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Cultures, and Sport to deliver a 2-year program that really supports a provincial approach to sustainability and climate adaptation in the tourism sector. Sustainability being really around the environmental aspect of sustainability. So this project was really also here to help advance the broader provincial government goals, which includes the goals within the strategic framework for tourism, as well as Clean BC, and the climate preparedness and adaptation strategy. And we recognize that significant work has already been accomplished at a grassroots level, led by the regional destination management organizations, which have been incorporated to and leveraged by this project. So a project committee was formed with representatives from Destination British Columbia, the ministry, as well as the 6 tourism regions, and as you can see, Indigenous tourism British Columbia. We'll go into the next slide, which really highlights what the goals of this overall project are. So you'll see there are 3 main goals that this 2-year project is hoping to achieve. The first one is really around the tourism industry is better prepared to adapt to climate change. The second one is really around the data, the tools, the measures that we want to use collectively across the industry to measure change over time. And the last one is really setting that long-term foundation for success by developing kind of that network of folk who can learn and talk and is going to work together to really harness the power of collaboration and sharing what we know and moving the needle around destination stewardship. So this was hoped to be accomplished in 4 projects. So the first 2 projects were really focused on the tourism businesses. So the first project is really around working, so a business could apply to the program, get an assessment, work in with I was gonna say, facilitator to then do that assessment, develop a plan to begin changing some of the behaviors or looking at the types of investments that could be made to move the needle on either environmental sustainability or climate preparedness. The second project is microgrants. I'm sure a number of you have heard of that and there's actually, I believe, an intake going on right now, is where tourism businesses with a plan in place from project 1 or through another mechanism could then apply for up to a $15,000 grant to help implement parts of that plan. Project 3 we'll dive into a bit more on the next slide, but Project 4 is really, as I said, that, and I was going to say, many of you probably, these DMO partners, welcome Project 4 members to this meeting. So this group is really here to learn, meet, train, share learnings, and really looking forward to, I was going to say, the great ideas and leadership that come out of this space collectively across British Columbia. We'll move to the next slide and talk a little bit about Project 3. All right. So Project 3 is about the data. Research and analytics, this is my world. So really the key outcomes around this is really to establish a common set of measures to track sustainable practices and climate adaptation initiatives across the industry. So again, it's kind of finding that, all the great work that's being done, whether at the community, at the regions, at that grassroots level, how do we develop that consistent provincial approach to this? And then we want to encourage all of us to begin aligning on those common measures and the data collection methods. Hint, that's what we're asking about for moving forward on this initiative. So the key success criteria we're really looking at here is we want to ensure that we have a common set of measures, that we're tracking progress over time, and that we have a baseline measures established. And this is where this business survey comes in. We'll get to the next slide there, Elena. Thank you. So for those who aren't familiar with the BCTCRI Project 3 and the data framework, this is really months of work summarized into 3 simple steps. And happy to go offline and talk about any of these in greater depth. This has been our world for a number of months here. So we first start off when we got the project brief, really looking at what is already out there. The last thing we wanted to do was duplicate anything that's already been done and take the learnings from what has already been done and apply it and with that BC lens when what is most important from that BC industry perspective. So we looked at everything from international frameworks such as UN Tourism or INSTO to I was going to say Destination Canada's Wealth and Wellbeing Index to provincial frameworks such as Clean BC and the Climate Adaptation Preparedness Strategy, as well as talk to DMOs across, global DMOs as well as our regional DMOs as well. Had lots of learning. So that's actually a legacy piece that we have. And if people are interested in learning a little bit more about that, feel free to reach out after. We'd like to continue to update this as more information becomes available. One of the biggest learnings we had from this inventory process is there's no one consistent framework that is being used by everybody. People are, dabbling, trying, piloting different ways of measuring and collecting data in this space. So the UN Tourism, for example, has developed an international framework with hundreds of measures to allow, I think, a destination the ability and flexibility to choose which ones mean the most to them. And they're actually, through an iterative process, doing a number of pilot projects to really hone in on different ways, different methodologies of beginning to collect this type of information. We also looked at the Wealth and Wellbeing Index. Again, lots of different measures. What can we take from that so we can align to what's being done at the national level, for example? So we took all these great learnings and then we moved into what we call the performance measurement design process, which basically takes the goals that we're trying to achieve through the broader BCTCRI initiative and translate them into clear, concise end result statements. So kind of taking that jargony words, that's for people such as myself who are in the data space, we need to be very clear on what we're trying to achieve over time. So we always ask the why. What is the end result we want to achieve? And what is that in clear, plain language so everybody has the same definition and understanding of what we're trying to collectively achieve together. So for example, the first, what we say KSO or key strategic objective of the BC Tourism Climate Resiliency Initiative was around building a cleaner tourism industry that is better prepared to adapt to climate change. So through this iterative performance measurement process, we were able to translate this into, okay, what does clean mean to all of us as a working group, as a project committee? What does this mean to us from that BC perspective? What is the most meaningful? So for example, we were able to translate into multiple end results that we're trying to achieve, for example. One was tourism businesses are using less fossil fuels. Tourism businesses are producing less waste, using less water. You get a sense of people, they're feeling prepared for when a natural hazard or extreme weather event occurs. So you begin to see how we're kind of taking those lofty jargony goals and putting them into clear, concise language to better measure and better identify what data we need to get that, to measure things over time. And then we've moved into prioritization, and this is a really important step. The last thing we wanted to do was measure 100 things. We went into this process knowing we wanted to measure a handful of the most meaningful measures first. Because we know, as I was going to say, know from experience, capturing data costs time, money, and people, and we want to be very clear and very targeted and iterate and learn from, and then build out. as things change over time, especially in this space, in that there's not a lot of, I was going to say, concrete examples of multiple, I was going to say, frameworks across different destinations. So this is some really innovative work across Canada, and yeah, just so thrilled that you're part of this journey with us right now. Thank you. So for example, to help us prioritize, we actually took that key strategic objective around, I'm going to just take a breath and a sip. Thank you. Is around building a cleaner industry that is better adapted to climate change. And what we actually found through this measurement process is two streams of measures. And the first one was about preserving supernatural British Columbia. So, as we know, the beauty of our province is just so essential to the people and the businesses that operate and live here. And of course, this is the main attraction for people coming to British Columbia. So, we need to ensure that we're maintaining that wild nature, that environmental stewardship and that we're reducing that impact on the environment on all that we do. The second stream was really around thriving businesses. So we recognize that those thousands of tourism businesses across the province must be profitable and resilient to ensure the viability of BC's tourism industry. So to be resilient in this space, they need to have the knowledge and the skills to consider and plan for climate change so that they can thrive and survive over time. So go to the next slide here. So we had quite a broad list through those two streams, and we went through a discovery process. So we actually had some measures around like tons of solid waste. I was going to say kilojoules of energy use, but through an extensive discovery phase, we found that a lot of the data we were hoping to collect does not exist or is not available for us to use. So we had conversations with like Fortis BC and BC Hydro and other, waste management associations to see and to source out what data was already available. So we're A, not duplicating, and B, making it easier to actually monitor this on behalf of the tourism businesses. So we're not asking them to go into bills and pull out numbers, for example. We found that those avenues were not ready yet to begin sharing that type of information with us. As a result, we took a step back, reframed, what can we control? What do we have influence on? So you'll see through the two streams, these are the priority measures that were identified to really move forward and focus on first. You'll see that first stream is really focused on emissions. So this is really in alignment to the Clean BC strategic plan, the broader government plan, and that we need to begin reporting the carbon emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions of the broader tourism industry. We've been working hand in hand with BC Stats over the last number of months and have numbers from 2019 to 2022 now. And those numbers will be shared, I was going to say, in the coming months. We're just kind of finalizing all the numbers, and those will be shared publicly shortly. The second one you'll see stream around thriving businesses. You'll see that again, what data is feasible? What's already out there that we could begin leveraging and using? So for example, business closures from that resiliency. So tourism businesses are not disrupted. Again, it's not the best measure, but it's an indicator which is already collected is feasible. So Stats Can, through the Tourism HR Canada, through the Labor Force Survey, they look at the number of tourism businesses that close. And then you'll see this business survey, why we're all here today. So these are some of the core measures to help look at driving that climate preparedness across the industry. So looking at actual changes in behavior. Do people have plans in place for natural hazards when they occur or extreme weather events? Do they have plans? Do they know what they're going to do? Are they spending time, money, people on climate adaptation infrastructure? Are they changing behaviors? Are they thinking it's important enough to begin investing in? And then from that BC lens, the fire smarting participation. As we know, wildfires has it's happened over the last number of years. This is a really important topic to really begin looking at. And we have a number of committees that are doing great work in this space too. And it sounds like we'll be getting more data too, which is amazing. But again, can we get a pulse check just to see where people are at, like in participating in these types of programs? the prevention type programs. Go to the next slide, Elena. Thank you. And then knowing that I was going to say, we don't have the perfect data, but we need to start somewhere. What's some other indicators, leading indicators, companion things to help tell that story of achievement over time that we can collect through primary research? So you'll see such things as sustainability certifications, business resiliency. So the number of actual days that were impacted by an extreme weather event, perceptions of preparedness. We get like looking at audits and, types of fossil fuels are used. So we start looking at, although we may not have the perfect solution yet, what can we begin collecting now to help begin painting that picture? Because right now there's not a cohesive lens, a view of what this is. So this is really innovative baseline supporting work. So we'll move to the next slide, which kind of gets into the ask. Why are we all here today? Again, thank you for sticking out so far. So really, for back in Project 3, one of the key outcomes is we want to encourage that alignment on common measures. So we have those measures. We even have the broader measures that didn't like make the cut because the data wasn't feasible yet. But again, great learnings we can share amongst us to kind of help move the needle on some of these initiatives. But we're here to talk about data collection methods that really help drive and support that decision making in this space. So move to the next slide. Thank you. And really the ask, the warm, ask from us is we would love to work with you to encourage the participation of tourism businesses to respond. And as I said, this is the first ever province-wide. This is a mouthful of a survey, again, probably named by a researcher, the Tourism Climate Adaptation and Environmental Sustainability Survey. This is the first survey across Canada in this space that really is getting into tourism businesses, trying to get to tourism businesses. And in this space, we have done space in working with tourism businesses, and what we have learned time and time again is having those direct relationships with the businesses gets the most response. So working hand in hand with all of you, with your partners, with your members, gets the word out and is more meaningful coming from you than from us who don't have necessarily that one-to-one contact on a day-to-day basis. So your assistance that we're greatly asking for is really to help distribute the survey through what we call a snowball sampling approach. So I was on Grouse a couple of weekends ago with my Spark and Ember group, and we're playing with snowballs. And so this idea of like you build it and it gets bigger and bigger. So the idea is we want to have that kind of amplified voice to spread the news of this survey and grow that sample size across the province. In true survey fashion, of course, there's some reminders to complete, to send out at regular intervals as well, which we'll talk about in the timeline section. And then we have the commitments that we're promising from Destination British Columbia. So we'll distribute the survey through our own channels, including our, social posts, newsletter, and we'll also do like a targeted, EDM to launch the survey through our contact list of businesses as well. We'll be providing business incentives, or there'll be a contest. We're just working through the logistics. So we're looking at a number of passes to a tourism industry conference in British Columbia, whether that's the tourism industry conference or Impact, for example, next year's Impact. We want to provide a reason for businesses to spend the 5 to 10 minutes to complete this survey. And we know incentives do work. We're committing to provincial report, and that will align to the requirements of the broader project. And if enough sample size, and this is again, we're having that one-on-one connection to the tourism businesses on the ground, we're committing to, if we have a large enough sample, to provide that regional, community, or sector specific report. So the idea is you would have a provincial baseline to give an idea of like where we are at a provincial level, and then have a community or a sector baseline as well in turn. So you can have these baselines moving forward together. We'll move the next slide. And this is one slide says it all, basically the business survey in a nutshell. So maybe just to clarify, for a business, we're looking at a business that's in the tourism industry, supports the tourism industry by offering a paid service to travelers. So that's kind of the first, I would say, delineation definition. We have really been ruthless of trying to make this as short and sweet and simple as possible for the respondent. So we have got this survey down to about 5 to 10 minutes based on where they are at in their journey in environmental sustainability and climate adaptation. Ideally, we're looking at one response per business, just again from that representatives reporting perspective. And you'll see the types of questions that we have there listed. So 4 sections of the survey. The first one's a quick intro. What type of business are you? Where are you located? Moving right into climate risk preparedness, looking at the number of operating days in 2024, the number of days closed due to natural hazards, number types of plans in place to deal with natural hazards, and the investment in climate adaptation. Similar section for environmental sustainability, but more of a focus on certifications that have been awarded, audits that have been performed, and again, that money, that investment, time, money, people into some of these practices. And then to conclude, some of those, I was going to say, types of ways we look at businesses by reporting, so number of operating years, the size of the business based on employees, whether it's Indigenous owned or led. And then we have some qualitative research, like questions at the end around types of training that would help move people along this journey, biggest challenges. And for those who want a final report and to be entered into the prize draw, we're asking them to leave their business name and contact information. The last little box here at the bottom is just to kind of take that step back. We want to encourage an accurate reflection. We're trying to establish a provincial baseline. It is, it's going to say without judgment, wherever they are at in their journey right now is great to know. That is so much learning. This information does not exist at all. So having that accurate reflection of where they currently are right now helps us establish that baseline so we can monitor change over time. So it's not about being the best now. And if they are already far exceeding what is already being done at a provincial level, that is amazing and wonderful. And I'm sure there's lots of learnings we can apply collectively. But it's also okay if this just is not a priority right now. We want to get that gauge. We want to know where on the journey people are at right now. We'll move to the next slide. Thanks, Elena. Timeline. So just quickly, I'll just speed things up. So here we are right now, January 14th with the webinar to kind of kickstart this process off. We plan to launch the survey next week. So we'll probably do a soft launch on Tuesday to some of our contact list to test out the survey, make sure it's being sent out, the data is being captured correctly. And then we'll ask probably the larger group, such as yourselves, if you're willing to participate, to send out the survey on Wednesday next week. We'll finalize all those timelines in an email, but that's the plan. And with survey work, we usually ask, there's usually a couple of reminders. If you've ever gotten a survey, you know what that is. So it's just, again, a friendly little nudge to say, just there's one more week remaining. We do want to keep this survey. Typically, we leave surveys open for 2 weeks. Depending on response rates or if there's certain areas around the province that we might need to focus on or prod a little bit, gently poke a little bit more, we might extend it for another week. So in February, you'll see that there's likely another 2-week reminder and some closing information as well, just like last day to complete the survey type of thing, to be entered into a draw, XYZ. March and April is really about provincial reporting. And as I said, following that requirement, we'll definitely be looking, if there's appropriate sample, looking at regional community sector findings are available. Next slide. Tools. So we want to make this easy for you. You're doing us a huge favor. You're assisting us getting the word, spreading the word out. So we're trying to make this as simple as possible. So we have 4 main tools that we'll provide templates for. You just kind of write in your organization, your community, and press send, essentially. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. The first one is kind of that full text dedicated newsletter email. Again, this is, as we found with any survey, having a dedicated space to send it out and it's not buried with everything else really makes a difference. So if there is any way to do a dedicated email or a newsletter just to this initiative, it is so appreciated. It really goes a long way when it's not buried with everything. We'll also, of course, include that newsletter blurb. I love that word. And we have tiles, some imagery that you can post in social media. And we also have some text social media posts that you can use. We'll just flip through a couple of examples just to kind of give a flavor of what we're trying to do to make this easier for you. So for the full text, we'll provide a template, which you just plug in. It's going to say your organization or community. We want to use a similar look and feel so that there's a consistent image that will be used for this initiative. So it's from the BC Content Hub. I'll go to the next slide. Some example newsletter blurbs. So again, very short and sweet, snappy, with some fun little icons to kind of encourage people to participate, like win a chance to win a ticket to the 2026 Impact Conference or Tourism Industry Conference. Click on this survey now to kind of build that enthusiasm, that engagement. Move to the next slide. These are some of the tiles that will be provided for you to use, whether you want to use it in an email or through social media or in your newsletter. I did want to call out the one on the bottom right. Not all businesses in the tourism industry see themselves as tourism businesses. So we created a little bit of messaging for like, does your business support tourism? So depending on the type of members or different, you know, where people kind of view themselves, or offering some different options, I guess, for people to use to help connect with the tourism businesses within your communities. Next slide. And again, social media posts, short, sweet, can be used with the imagery that was previously provided. So we'll move to the next slide, which I think is kind of wraps it up. So that is it from me. But before I address any questions that are there, and before anybody, in case anybody needs to leave, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming to this webinar. And on behalf of the BCTCRI partners, just thank you in advance for supporting this project by distributing the survey. It truly is an ambitious, groundbreaking survey that we're embarking on, and we so appreciate you being on this journey with us. So to that end, if you haven't already, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A functionality, or if you prefer to ask a question, please raise your hand. And hopefully now I can begin seeing some things, but we did have some prompt questions on the next slide, Elena, for just, I know that was kind of a bit of a brief, quick run through a very extensive survey, but yeah, just if you have any further questions, is there any other tools or resources to make this simple for you? Is there anything else we can provide to make this easy? And do you have any other ideas to generate participation in the survey from tourism businesses? So we'll open up the floor, and if people want to raise hands or have questions. Yes,
Yeah,
I was going to
maybe.
say, yeah, sorry, I see Nikki's question. And
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, maybe we can jump back and look at the date slide again.
yeah. Elena, do you mind flipping back, please? Thank you. Oh. So really what we're looking at it is probably, so next week a launch, we'll do a DBC soft launch with a few of our partners on our contact list, and then we'll ask partners such as yourself, Nikki, to send it out on Wednesday at your convenience, ideally. And then we'll do that kind of, and within that email or that reminders, we will send out those key dates of when to send out reminders. And if we're extending the survey season, we'll also kind of send a note to folk as well about, we're going to extend it one more week. This is when you send the final reminder type of thing. So hopefully a maximum of the initial launch, potentially 2 reminders and a close. So maximum 4 to 5 different touch points. So thank you so much in advance. All right, just opening
And
it up.
there was another question here from Blaine. Just what is the required community sample size for local reports? And I just said that that's still being figured out, and it'll be potentially tailored to each community, looking at what that total community size is, the responses that have come in by the different tourism sectors, like whether it's accommodations or food and beverage or retail, etc., and then some of the other considerations as well. And that the intention is to monitor the responses as they come in and see by community if there needs to be some boosting, and then reach out to the community DMO to be able to see if we might be able to boost those responses. But you might have some other things to add to that, Erin.
No, no, thanks, Susan, and thanks, Blaine, for the question. Yeah, I was going to say we're still working out the details, as Susan had said, with that, and I think it really is dependent on we've never done a survey of this kind, so it is really going to be that day-to-day monitoring to see how things are progressing. And if we're seeing, seeing certain areas that we might need a little bit more representation, but at that community level, yeah, it might be working directly with you to be like, okay, so how many, like we've received 15. Is this a representative kind of sample within your community type of thing? So we'll work through the details and but we kind of need to see what we get before we start kind of putting those hard, steadfast rules and applying them across the board. So I would say, wait and see. We definitely want to get down to that community level. So as we know that, that direct relationship of you sending that out to your members, your businesses, that's where that response rate really increases instead of coming directly from us. All
Yeah,
right.
and then we've got another question from Blaine. Can the local CDMO sweeten the pot with additional incentives? And if so, can we access the participant list? Good question.
I was going to say, I love researchers at heart. I love it. I was going to say, we can maybe take that offline, Blaine. But yeah, I was going to say, maybe that's to, I would say, DMO's own discretion of how they want to sweeten that pot. But yeah, I was going to say, we do want to, I was going to say, from a research perspective, we always try to keep the identity of those who have answered anonymous. So, again, without judgment of what's going on, who's participated, where they're at that journey. So I think it's very much uh, how do we, it might be like those broader categories. Like, for example, we might have like, Blaine, I have 3 accommodators and 2 restaurants and 1 tour operator. How does that align with your kind of your sample within your community? So those are the types of questions we'll likely need to work through as we see responses come in.
Okay, thanks. And then there's a comment here from Lexi that the QR code could
Mhm.
be a way to display the survey link for easy smartphone access. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I believe the functionality that we of our online survey tool will allow for that. And again, our survey tool is mobile friendly, so folk can do it right on their phone very easily, which is great. So that's a great suggestion. We'll definitely take that away. Thanks, Lexi.
Okay. And then the next one here, if our community doesn't meet the minimum threshold for a local report, can you still share the raw data for our community that you did receive? And I think you already answered that, but maybe just.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And really what we want to ensure is that an individual business cannot be identified. So there's usually some minimum thresholds that we ensure to ensure that you can't like pick out and say, that must be so and so's business because that's the way they answered it. So that's something we can work out individually with the communities to ensure that we're ensuring the anonymity from a business response perspective, but also, what can we provide at that community level? Hopefully that helps.
And then one from Jacqueline here, is it guaranteed that the regional DMOs will receive the survey results from the businesses that answer?
Yes, thank you, Jacqueline. I think it really is dependent on the sample. So the folk who actually answer the survey, so across the province. So our intention is wherever possible, yes, we want to create a regional report, but we want to ensure that that again we have enough responses so that again we're maintaining anonymity of folk who reply to the survey. But yeah, I was going to say for the Caribou Chilcotin Coast, we'll maybe work and see what are some creative solutions, for example, if there's not enough participation. So it's definitely on my radar too, Jacqueline. So our intention is yes, wherever we can, there will be a regional report. Okay.
Great. And then Blaine has asked the question, how do we sign up? And I told him that he just did by asking that. So we'll send the information out.
Yes, and for all those folk who have registered, hopefully you don't mind another couple of emails from us. But yes, that's, I think by even just being part of this, we'll definitely send you, we have the registration list for this webinar. So we'll definitely send this information, those templates, those tools next week for you. So expect that in your inbox next week, Blaine. All
Thanks.
right.
And Denise from Tourism Richmond asked, will CDMOs be expected to share any costs if communities or sector findings become available?
No, the BCTCRI, the Tourism Climate Resiliency, has budget for this survey. So the reporting will be covered through the project costs. And really, this is really an opportunity for us to say thank you, because we know to get the most results, it is way more meaningful to come directly from the communities, from the sectors. So I was going to say, just for you participating and helping us share the word, we know we're going to have a bigger, more robust sample size. So thank you. And it's more as a thank you and a recognition that we're taking your time to send out these reminders and surveys and stuff like that. So reporting will be covered by the BCTCRI project. Thanks, Denise.
And yeah, those are all the questions that we have that have come through the box here. Oh, here's another one. What is the rationale for choosing to make this an anonymous survey? It seems like there could be a missed opportunity to develop networks and collaboration amongst businesses within communities by choosing to keep this data anonymous.
Yeah, and great. I was going to say great insight and perspective for sure. Yeah, for me, I'm a researcher, so yeah, the more data I can collect and know where it's coming from and whom, the better. But there is some, I was going to say, just some standard practices around research, and that we want to ensure that those folk that are, that they're willing to, that they're able to share their accurate, like their honest, accurate reflection of where they are at on their journey here. So, for example, like, yes, we won't be, I was going to say, again, just from the anonymity and in standard research practice, we wouldn't share the people who participated. We could share a summary of how many from each, say, subsector had participated per community to give you a sense of who's involved. But really, we want to ensure that, people's identities are protected so that they're, again, have the ability to be completely honest and open about their responses and where they are at. But fully recognize, and maybe that those are the types of conversations you have with your community partners, right? Like, is this an opportunity to begin looking at some of these measures? How do we collectively work together to measure some of these things that are not only on this survey, but maybe identified in the broader listing that we had looked at before, but just weren't feasible? So I think, although we can't share the individual businesses that maybe participate in this survey, I think it's going to begin a number of great conversations across the province to your point, to build those networks and learn from each other. And as kind of as a takeaway too, we're working on providing like some calls to actions for businesses, and which kind of gets me into the last slide, Elena. It's kind of a sidebar. So as I had said, a number of these businesses, like the data, just not feasible. So we can't get tons of waste. We can't get energy use at this time. But businesses have this information, but it's not easy to summarize, to get. But we're actually doing some calls of action to your point, like build that network, build that collaboration, learn from each other about what people are doing around the province. So if anybody knows of any leaders, business leaders who are working on waste reduction, carbon reduction, or preparing for climate change, like those leaders, mostly from that measurement data, that data space, please send them to us. We would love to connect with them to learn a little bit more, and again, to develop those networks and communities of collaboration in this space. So I'll move to the next slide, just being cognizant of time. Keep the questions coming. I've left my email address there. But just thank you so much. I know that's all the time we have left for today. Thank you for sticking around to the end and for asking great questions and for providing great inputs and perspective. Please reach out to myself or Susan at any time if you have any further questions or if there's any additional ways we can support you in participating in this project. And beyond that, stay tuned. You'll see some emails from us next week with a survey link and some of those tools that we were talking about. So again, just a warm thank you and thank you for your time today.